season 2011-12 was one of the most incredible seasons in the history of Scottish football, with the death of one of our largest clubs. The 10 seasons that followed were an amazing 10 years in the history of Celtic Football Club, with 4 consecutive trebles, one of which was an invincible treble. And it all ended with a worldwide pandemic that resulted in a worldwide lockdown. This is the fan story and the fans' recollection of those incredible seasons. You can listen to it every week if you're a paid subscriber to theceltiCunderground.substack.com. We hope you enjoy.
Music in my head, crazy music playing in the morning light. Oh, ho, ho, it's magic, you know.
So we are here for our third season of 9 in a row with Andrew, Stephen and Robert, and it is the 2013-14 season. And actually, as I just said, just as I started recording, it's a season that's memorable for very little, bar the bad games. So to give some context, around that time, when the season kicked off, it was "Wake Me Up" by and this is where the fact that my music knowledge stopped around 2000 starts to be an issue. Actually, I recognised this song when I then played it, because I thought, I don't know it at all. "Wake Me Up" by Avicii or something.
Oh, yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, you know it if you heard it. And actually, when we kicked off our Champions League campaign, it was "Blurred Lines" by Robin Thicke, that very misogynistic video. Anyway, films were Despicable Me 2, Hunger Games, The Hobbit, The Lego Movie. Last year was a more famous year for people's deaths, but this season we had Seamus Heaney, David Frost, Ken Norton, the boxer, Lou Reed, Nelson Mandela and Peter O'Toole both died in the December. Phil Everly and Eusebio both died in the January. Tony Benn passed away in March. Scottish football, Sandy Jardine passed away in April. And Bob Hoskins also died in the April. So that's the cultural context as to what was going on in the world at that time. So we kicked off our league campaign on the 3rd of August, but prior to that, we had the pain of Champions League qualifiers. So we had Cliftonville, whom we beat home and away, Elfsborg, who we sneaked through with a 1-0 aggregate, and then Shakhtar Karagandhi. So who wants to take us away with those qualifying games? Stephen, I'll let you go first, since you were just talking before we came on air. I'll let you go first on those 3 qualifying games.
Cliftonville was a good one. Loads of guys travelled. It was a really sunny day. You might not remember this, Brian, but we were in the Admiral Bar in shorts watching that away leg because it was so warm. The weather was terrific. So Cliftonville was fairly academic. That moved us on to Elfsborg, which was really quite a nail-biter, probably due to the fact that we only won 1-0 in the home leg, and then the away leg, we sailed close to the win, but we defended well generally. I think Mo Bangura was playing for Elfsborg, and that would have been really embarrassing if he'd have scored and put us out or caused any damage. And then it moves us on to Karagandhi. And Andrew, you might have been at this. I don't know if you travel, but I'm sure.
I couldn't get my thing in time. I couldn't get
a visa.
Wouldn't play ball at all. The Kazakhstan embassy. I couldn't get the actual.
I'm sure I remember reading it's the furthest, if you travel from Scotland in European football, it's the furthest you can travel. It was like it's getting into another. You're in Asia essentially, rather than Europe. So in the away leg, it was shown live in Channel 5, and it had a guy called, we were discussing this beforehand, Clark Carlisle, who was a co-commentator, who was so condescending towards Celtic and Scottish football. It was unbelievable. He spoiled the whole thing. And I think I remember that they scored quite a late goal to make it 2-0. And, your heart sank at that point. It was going to be a huge task coming back to Celtic Park with a 2-0 deficit. But I've got to say that Karagandhi game at Parkhead is one of my favourite European games. It was a great night. The Chris Commons goal was awesome. And then that finish at the end whereby I think Stokes missed a sitter right under the bar. and we thought we'd blown it, and it was 2 each. It was going to extra time, possibly penalties, and then Stokes went in a great run, and he lightens up James Forrest, who scores. And again, a lot of my memories are entwined with my sons at the time because he was so young. And that's another game. He was about 9 at the time, and he talks about the end to that game. Absolutely outstanding an end to a football game. And that got us into the group stages.
So, Andrew, maybe with Shakhtar being in a former Soviet republic, they didn't want Trotskyites getting in, so maybe there was more to it than that on your on your visa application.
But what my
Security
memory
services were on to you.
What my memory is, I wrote a thundering piece after the first leg, or maybe even after the second leg, the kind of piece that Harry Brady would abhor, because I made the point that Celtic supporters always give it this, where's the signings? So, hey, we need them for the Champions League qualifiers. Where's the signings? Where's the signings? We need to make signings. We don't have enough in centre back. So they sign this guy, Virgil van Dijk. So this guy comes in and plays and almost costs Celtic progress in the Champions League, because it didn't help. He was partnered beside Stephen Maloko for that first leg, but he was so out of touch because signings don't come in. They don't tend to come in, and within qualifiers for a Champions League, they're making an impact. They're making a positive impact. They tend to need 6 months. So I always say, whatever your Champions League qualifying squad is the one that's assembled the previous January, and Van Dijk was the perfect example of that. He had to take him out the team for the second leg. He put Effie in. He put Effie in to partner. Did Maloko keep? What was that? Sorry, Lustig, right? So he changed the entire centre back pairing.
I think my memory, the feature of the two games against Caragrande is that they had a guy with an enormous long throw.
Yes.
And I think they scored from one of the long throws in the first leg in Astana. And even in the second leg, when we got 2 up, when we got back to parity after Samaras scored just after half-time, this guy launched a couple of long throws with 20 minutes to go. One of them ended up getting kicked off the line. Another one ended up hitting the crossbar when somebody got on the end of it. And you're right, Andrew, Van Dijk was poor in the first leg, but even in the second leg, we couldn't cope with what seemed to be a fairly agricultural type of tactic before Forrest got the winner. And the thing I remember a lot about Forrest's winner was Neil Lennon's celebration when he sprinted down the touchline in front of the main stand and just dived on a bunch of bodies with the players. Wee Jamesy presumably somewhere in the bottom, but I agree. It was an amazing finish to what should have been a bit more of a straightforward tie, but we learnt in subsequent years that going to places like Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, especially going in August, is quite tricky. And we didn't win there under Rodgers, 2 or 3 seasons later. So we underestimated them, I'm sure.
I know that you're a travel person, Rob, but see that the thing that strikes me as well about the Kazakhstan thing, there was profiles in the media about how progressive and forward a country that Kazakhstan was. I think we tend to think because it's an ex-Russian or ex-USSR rather state that it's somehow quite a poor country and a backward country, and it was quite enlightening to actually see the buildings in Kazakhstan and the infrastructure, which apparently was absolutely terrific.
Well, it's an oil and gas state, but I was just going to say quickly that maybe too many views are influenced by Sacha Baron Cohen's, Borat from Kazakhstan, as much as anything else. But it's a fairly wealthy country.
I wrote a preview piece about the tie for the Scotland Sunday the week before, and I went on as you always do, writing these things, you go on the Foreign Office Advisory website, and it said all this, you can't leave your drinks, and it was saying about they play this game with a sheep's head and all this. It was almost so I put all this stuff in, and we got a letter demanding that I apologise. We got a letter from the Kazakhstani ambassador in London that he was demanding my head be kicked about, like removed from my body and kicked around the field, kind of thing. It was like, it was a stinging letter. It's like, who is this guy? And I did write back to him, you know, like I didn't apologise in the paper, but I did write back to him and said, look, this isn't me. Take it up with the Foreign Office. I'm just parroting Foreign Office advice.